Um, Hello and welcome to another episode of the Make It Work podcast. My guest today is Anton Zotin. Anton is an independent trainer, coach, mentor, facilitator, and change agent. In his own words, Anton loves what he does, and the reason is simple. His passion is to make software development less painful, more efficient, and in this way to help people to be a little bit more happy. Anton started his career in the 21st century, has worked in a wide variety of companies, holding a wide variety of positions from garage startups to bloody enterprises, from a manual QA to a C-level position. And that has obviously given him the opportunities to observe how value could be differently delivered or not delivered. We're going to get into all of that. Anton, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, hello. Thank you, Balash, for this nice introduction.
So it's my pleasure to have you on the podcast. I have also had the pleasure of learning a lot from you and seeing you in action. But I thought I'd let you describe you being in action and having a great time. So could you tell us a bit about your best ever experience as an Agile coach?
It's really hard to answer this question because I have a feeling that for me, Agile coaching or consulting or Scrum mastering, well, in general, helping people suffer less, building complex products and deliver complex services, is about falling in love. And every time I meet a new group of people, it's like, wow, this is the best. And then later on, it's really hard to say what was the best experience because it was every time unique and lovely. So I'm not sure that I would share the most exciting moment. Maybe the one that right now sticks to my head, and it's pretty recent situation. And it was about just a tiny moment of our interaction when I got a feedback which touched me deeply because I think this is an important part of what I'm doing. And the feedback was very interesting. People that I worked with, they told me, Anton, thank you very much for working with us because recently we started to talk about feelings at our retrospectives. And I was like, wow, this is so good because for me, agile ways of working is not about mechanical doings, not about just what's written in a Scrum guide. It's actually about upgrading an operational system of people working with each other, interacting with each other to a more human-oriented, soul-oriented approach where every individual is giving his or her best and then together you have this synergy. But this could happen only on the level where we're seeing each other as a true and unique human beings, not just workers or employees. Basically, this is kind of an echo of this factory approach where every person is just a gear in the huge machinery. So for me, it was like, wow, yeah, finally they're doing this and I actually acknowledge it and appreciate. So this is my moment.
Wow, that is amazing. So I'm gonna just dive into all sorts of weird and wonderful questions, and the first one that comes to my mind is, where do we find feelings in the Agile manifesto?
Well, I think this is exactly this part of individuals and interactions are more important than processes and tools. While processes and tools are still important because, well, we need rules of the game. So we all know that we play Scrum, not hockey, not tennis, not whatever. But humans, their inner souls, their feelings, their emotions, and how they interact with each other, this is the most important, and that's what we have to magnify and bring more to the workplace.
So I completely agree with you. But I have to be honest, like if I think about it, for a long time in my career, I didn't put the two together. So for me, the individuals and interactions part was, even that was more about what's the process or how do these people interact. It was still about the rules of the game rather than the people. And thanks to all the agile gods and people who supported me along the journey, that I was able to connect the two. But I get the feeling that a lot of people still feel that way, or they do not see that this goes way beyond how we just interact with each other at work, like really talking about feelings and emotions. Why do you think that is? Why do people find it hard? Is it just because the manifesto authors didn't make it very obvious or clear, or do we have a resistance?
I have a feeling that the roots of this situation, they go back to our kindergartens and schools and universities, because what we got taught there, it's like how to do math, how to write properly, how to be good at something, getting grades. So all the doings, all the mechanical things, all the processes and tools. But still, even now in the 21st century, there is no strong emphasis on how to be aware of your emotions, how to be aware of the emotions of others, how to interact with each other, how to collaborate with each other. I think it was a big aha moment for me several years ago. I was reading a book about kids' psychology, and an author mentioned that actually if you observe kids, really small kids, in a playground, in a sandbox, you see that their default mode is actually collaboration. They very easily start to play with each other, even seeing each other the first time ever, and they really co-building things. But then, author mentioned, if you observe the educational system and what it tries to bring in within the kids, it more teaches them not how to collaborate, but how to compete.
Right.
Because all these grading system, like Mark is better than Tony because he got A and another one got B. Sorry, I'm better. And all these constant comparison and okay, let's ask several students in the room and see who knows these better. And then there is big authority figure, aka teacher, who makes these decisions. This ruins this built-in capability to collaborate. And then we got adults who knows how to compete with each other.
Wow.
And this is terrible. So we rewire brains, and then we have all these problems at the workplaces, where then people just don't know how to do things that kids are so brilliant at.
Wow. Thank you for that perspective. And to be very honest, I am somebody who would consider himself as skeptical of the regular school system for the reasons of, well, it teaches you to be good at testing or taking tests rather than really understanding something, or kind of putting people in grades one after the other doesn't acknowledge the fact that some kid might be a genius at mathematics and could be able to do 10th grade maths in 3rd grade, but might be dyslexic otherwise and couldn't write an essay or keep the alphabet in order. But we kind of bundle everybody in the same place. So I was always coming from that perspective, but I never emphasized or focused on the fact that a big part of the marking system is all about individual contribution. And then the way we mark and give out the results is really about who's number 1, number 2, number 3, and never about the group. Wow, thank you for sharing that. So how do you change that? How do you change that in an organization full of adults who have been trained to basically size each other up and value each other according to that, and don't think in terms of teamwork.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a two paths way how to make it happen. So the first one is to change the system. So again, we can take a look at the scientific world and see that a lot of studies were done to analyze how people behave in the different circumstances. Like the biggest and the craziest, I think, is a well-known prison experiment where good students started to behave really badly just because the system was designed that way. Mm-hmm. But we can get the results of this experiment and apply it to the organizations. Because if we observe the traditional design of organizations, the system is actually copying the system from the schools and universities. Again, kind of bringing these let's compete with each other. So we can change the system so people will be gently pushed by the system to behave in a more collaborative way. And there are already these system templates existing in the world, aka Agile frameworks. So for example, Scrum is a beautiful one to make it happen on the team level. If you want this to happen on a bigger scale, well, you can search for Agile scaling frameworks, which tells you how to change the organizational template on an organizational scale. For example, a good one is large-scale Scrum, aka LAS. But this is only the one part, which is easier to do. Well, still hard, but easier because you know what to change within the organization. You just have to be brave and bold to go there. Many companies are still afraid to make these radical changes. But then there is another way, another part of the journey is to help people to get used to this new system. So there should be a group of people, well, the bigger is the scale, the bigger should be the group of people who will guide these people from one system to another, basically creating a safety path, teaching, explaining, supporting, because this is a big change. This is a big personal and group change. So there should be a change agent or change agents which know how to do this, and also how to create environment around. Because just implementing Scrum in a bloody enterprise, as you mentioned, I had some experience in a bloody enterprise. So implementing a Scrum framework in a bloody enterprise could look like trying to plant roses in a desert.
Right.
So you need also to think about the environment, like incentive system, what's about energy, what's about motivation, what about certain processes, even roles, and the way how people get promoted. So these things has to be changed throughout the way of implementing the system.
So you have a brilliant talk, How Not to Do an Agile Transformation, on YouTube. And for the listeners, please go find it, watch it. I'm going to put the link in the show notes as well. Do you want to dive into some of those topics? How did the talk came about? And if you were to give like a 2-sentence summary, what are the pitfalls of an agile transformation that goes wrong?
I think the reason why I created this talk was that I've seen too many failing and fake agile transformations where neither of what I mentioned in terms of changing the system happened. It was rather, okay, let's read Scrum Guide, let's cherry pick certain aspects and label them on top of what we have within the organization, and then let's hope that we will get these freaking 500% velocity improvement that Sutherland is talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then, well, in majority of cases, nothing happens.
Right.
And the reason of my talk was actually to explain what process people go through within the true transformation, if it's needed, and how to support them with that. And the key points were that basically, first of all, the leader who wants this change to happen should create a critical mass of discomfort, so people will understand that with the current status quo, we can't live any longer, and then initiate the change journey, where not only the system, but the belief system of employees will start to change. But then, throughout this way, to understand that this is a tough process and transformation could be called successful only when the majority of employees will upgrade this belief system on how we work on a daily basis. And this process should be gentle, caring, and only then it will be successful. So this is like the key points, I think, from my talk that you mentioned about.
So, as I said before, people, please go watch this talk, and it goes into a bit more detail about all of this. So there's two things that I'm taking out of this. One part is applying a framework that is suited to the organization, and the other is really supporting the people to get the best out of that framework and helping them deal with essentially all issues that happen when you go through personal change, right? Dealing with uncertainty, not knowing where you're going to go, how you're going to deal with it, whether you feel supported, whether it's going to force you to change your lifestyle or behavior. So those are two huge things. And if I think about organizations, in my experience, I have only seen like little parts of that. And you know this, last year I was coaching a startup, and I supported them through essentially the first couple of bits of this kind of a transformation. So we introduced Scrum, and I was there supporting a whole bunch of people on how they deal with this and their new roles within that, and the potential changes coming up. And as I kind of in my language already indicated, I'm not working with that startup anymore. And as far as I know, they don't have anybody else supporting that, and kind of it is likely that it goes down the route of most startups where they start something and then they lose their path because they do not have the stamina or the support that they will need. Can you talk a bit about your experiences with different companies where what kind of experiences have you had in terms of starting, in terms of going through kind of the 40 years in the desert and eventually reaching God and getting the commandments?
Well, I think what you mentioned about your story is pretty common. Like a company brings in a consultant, and then he or she consults how to change the ways of working, and then consultant disappears, and everything what was achieved starts to slowly decay because there is no one who takes care about these things. So in my experience, what helped to keep what was achieved and kind of keep growing it and making even better is when I help to build a community of people who will take care about this. And in my experience, the best result that I've seen were when active members of this community were the key leaders of an organization. Mm-hmm. So when basically they plus regular employees put on their shoulders a regular duty of taking care of the system to shape it the way that it will support people to make best out of them.
Right. So you already kind of led me to my next question. the role of leadership in these kind of things. And I definitely don't want to take away from the role of community, because I think that is a very important thing. So the role of community and the role of leadership, and how much can one affect the other? The classical question: bottoms up transformation or top down transformation? Which one lasts? Which one ends up eating the other? If you want, you can bring in Frederick Laloux's book, Reinventing Organization, into the mix as well. Over to you.
Well, I think if we're talking about a role of a leader in a modern organization, what comes into my mind is two role models, metaphorical models. So the first one is more traditional capitalistic. A leader is an owner of a mine. And then the only thing he's thinking about, how to increase the amount of money we're getting out of this mine. Right. And then playing whatever tips and tricks to make it happen. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that this role model is bad. I just personally have a feeling that it's a little bit outdated. So it well belongs to the 20th century, to the 19th century, but I have a feeling that we as a society continue to grow, and maybe it's time now to start kind of letting go of this role model.
Right.
For me, what I personally found better fit for the modern days is a role model of a small village mayor. And this village could still foster from owning a mine and doing the mining. Mm-hmm. But then the mayor understands that the whole process should be sustainable. So you should actually build a village where villagers are happy and not leaving this village to the city where there is all the wonders happening, or to another village where it feels better. But make all the possible that people actually feel happy and make best out of them. And through that, they also do the mining. But because we're getting the maximum out of them in terms of their cognitive skills, that they could even come up with an ideas that mayor would never come up with. Like basically saying, you know what, every village is doing mining. It's actually a low income business. Mm-hmm. Should we, I don't know, create a device that will convert the coal that we're mining into diamonds?
Right.
And that should come up from the villagers, not from the leader of the community.
Yeah.
And this is I think it's a dramatical shift. And what's my day-to-day duty as a leader?
Absolutely. I want to speak to this shift. Where does this shift come from? I'm thinking as an individual, it might be that if I'm one of the miners and someday I wake up and I go like, what the hell am I doing with my life? It's the same day in and day out. And what about all the ideas I get? Nobody listens to them. So on an individual level, I might get to that level of discomfort with what is and what could be. And then I might decide to do something about it, maybe I transform the mine and the community altogether, or I leave. But when we talk about systems, the village, systems strive towards kind of their own survival and stability, right? So a system has less incentive to change what is working, and would probably shoot down me, the individual, who is like, no, but I'm not alone here. Me and the 10 other guys, we would be much happier if somebody would just listen to us. How does this change even start to occur, and how can we work with it?
Mm-hmm. Well, in my experience, you mentioned it previously about the top-bottom and bottom-up transformation. My experience tells me that the more successful are the top bottom, but the top bottom starting actually within the heads and the hearts of the leaders, aka personal transformation. So, there is this psychology of how adults keep growing, and it tells us that this growth is actually optional in comparison with the growth of kids.
Right.
So kids, they basically nearly don't have an option not to grow. They actually do this until 18 or 20 years old, but then the continuation of this growth is actually optional. And some other experts even call this kind of an optional upgrading of inner operational system or a personal growth. So I think this is strongly connected with that. So a leader has to evolve voluntarily to a point where he or she believes that the purpose of a leader is not only to count numbers, to please investors, and to squeeze whatever he or she can out of employees, but rather to create this village community that could withstand whatever changes happening in the world. Because take a look at the list of the top organization on the market. So this list is more and more rapidly changing as we go into the 21st century, and big giants of the past just disappearing from the market. So this is because they didn't have this capability of evolving on the market's needs, because they were too strictly sticked into just making this product, and by that making money and nothing else. So they lost their opportunity to pivot their direction. This very often is connected to what Nassim Taleb calls anti-fragile. So for me, an anti-fragile organization is an organization where inside of it there is a capability to basically sense what's changing and to move towards these opportunities. So where we are not crazy about one product or one service, but we are just evolving and moving. And this is hard to grasp just on the top of the organization. So for example, I really not sure that such giants as Coca-Cola and McDonald's will be able to make this move. I think they're too sticked to the idea of selling crappy quality product, showering a lot of money into advertising, and nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe into companies which could totally reshape their product portfolio, but still be these village which keep growing and making villagers and people around village happier.
So if the miracle does not happen, if the leader does not find it in their heart and in their mind to make this transformation, what could happen? I think you kind of already said the organizations start to disappear, right? And people go to other places. I'm trying to figure out what could be the triggers, essentially. What could be the triggers for anyone to make a change, and especially when we think about organizations. And the thing I get from what you just shared is essentially you have to sense that there's need for innovation. So somehow the market tells you this, or you realize it yourself, or you look at the feedback internally or externally, and you somehow realize that there's need for change. And from a business perspective, we could call it there's a need for innovation. I mean, that's how we, the consultants, sell our services, right? That you're not going to make it too far if you just keep going as you go. But if we innovate a bit, if we make certain changes, and we can support you with that, that you would be ready for the future or you would be in line with the times. Now, would you say that most modern businesses almost always have a need for innovation and need for change?
Actually, I'm not sure about that because I have kind of a competing observation that currently on the market we have too much money, which could hide the need for innovation. For example, just see how many startups gained huge piles of money from investors and existing maybe for many years already without actually making money.
Right.
Because the problem is hidden by all this showering of the money. So I think that the realization of the need for this innovation and the need for an upgrade of this inner and operational system within the leaders comes only when there is a deep and true perception of the pain in the ass happening.
Right.
It's nothing new. It goes back to Carl Jung's works, where basically he explained very easily how a human being starts an inner transformation. Only when there is enough pain in the ass personally for this human being.
Right.
So I think the same is applicable for organizations. If a leader has enough pain in the ass because of what's happening with the organization, then it's a higher chance that he or she will start the personal journey of inner transformation and then will lead organization on this path.
Thank you for raising this money topic because I have the feeling that when we often talk about innovation, we talk about product innovation, how to build the product differently or how to build a different product. But in a way, money or easy supply of money hides the need for business innovation. Because that's where we keep doing the same thing, okay, we buy cheaper cars from China or something else or whatever, but we sell them by just doing tons of advertisement, and as long as we have tons of money, we just don't feel the need to make that change or come up with creative ways. So often all the other aspects of a business are just much more traditional than the product development part.
Well, it's true, and these could go very crazily wrong. I had a recent discussion with a startup that already got money from investors, and it's already like I think they're trying to do what they were pitching for 2 years. So they're already 100 employees, and product is still not on the market, and well, they are not earning money. But this is not the terrible thing. The shocking thing is when I started to analyze what's the focus of different groups of people within an organization, I actually realized that the amount of people working at what was pitched to investors is just a team of 7.
Wow.
A team of 7 out of... Yeah, just because no one cares. So it's like the pitching happened. Investors have their investments in many companies. It's just one out of many. And they're pretty relaxed, even losing this money. And this is a high level of inefficiency. But no one within this setup needs an innovation because everyone's having fun. Investors, they did their portfolio investment. Founders of this company, well, they got the money to play with the toys. And, well, they got a nice office, really good engineers having fun, writing the best code ever. Is there a product on the market? Well, no one cares.
Yeah, well, the world can get quite crazy. So I want to bring this back to the Agile manifesto. Let's say for whatever reason, the miracle does happen, and people realize that we need to have some way of fostering a good way of working, etc. And they say we're gonna go with Agile, and all they have is the Agile manifesto. Do you think they can reach nirvana just following the manifesto?
That's an interesting question. While I'm kind of a preacher of Agile, I would say that it's not guaranteed. It's still pretty unpredictable world, and if it would be 100% guaranteed that if you apply Agile mindset, you will gain all the money on the market, no, it's not true. Will it increase chances of building better products and be more happier? Yes, that I truly believe into. But then it should happen only if what's written on the Agile manifesto will be adopted as a new life mindset. And most probably it can't happen through just, reading an Agile manifesto every night before going to bed. It actually has to happen through experiencing on an hourly basis how this feels differently, working together, actually valuing the human's interaction, actually thinking on an hourly basis what's the most important value we can deliver to our clients. So you have to live it. And then the chances that miracle will happen, they are higher.
So I'm asking this question because I found myself in discussions where people say, Agile is great, but it's not going to teach you product management. Agile manifesto is great, but it's not clear enough, so you have to go with at least Scrum or Kanban or XP or something. And then, of course, there's all sorts of discussions about SAFe and crazy things, but and I'm always trying to figure out, what's the minimum you would need to do to ensure some sort of continuous improvement? And that's where the question comes in. If somebody says, you know what, Anton, you have opened my eyes, I'm going to commit to trying to live by the manifesto. And if they do that, will they eventually get to somewhere? And of course, I agree with you. Business success is not guaranteed, but the odds of improving, do you think they really need Scrum, Kanban, or anything else? Or can they figure it out if they commit to following the manifesto?
Thinking. I think if leaders will just try to incorporate what's written in a manifesto on a day-to-day basis, most probably the manifesto is too vague to make it happen. Maybe if leaders will, step on this path of the personal growth, which will lead them to the better versions of themselves, for whom what's written on the Agile manifesto is a common sense, then this magic that you're talking about could happen. But in majority of cases, you need a certain construct, aka system, which will push gently people towards the right behavior that then will lead a mindset change. Meaning Agile frameworks like Scrum. But then you have to trust the system. Because in majority of cases of the Scrum implementation, what I see, this is a soulless Scrum but approach, where we just try to cherry pick certain aspects and put on top of what we have in an organization. And then it always a huge set of compromises. So I'm trying to observe like what I've been seeing for decades in the industry with these so-called Scrum implementations, and there are not so many cases where I would truly agree that was the pure true Scrum. In majority of cases, it's Scrum but. For example, we have Scrum, but our product owner is actually not a product owner. It's a business analyst relabeled into the product owner. But there are a bunch of senior guys which telling her what to put in the product backlog. Mm-hmm. Or we have Scrum, but as a Scrum Master, we took this junior QA lady which does this part-time. Or we have Scrum, but we implemented it into a back-end team, and they're just doing this back-end system using Scrum without actually thinking what's the value behind the product. So I think it's very important to trust the system if you want to go there. For example, no one questions the football game rules, so everyone understands. To have a beautiful football game, you need really experienced football players. You need them to be united into a team. You need a good trainer which helps them to do this, and that no one around questioning the rules of the game. And then you have this beauty on the field.
Indeed. So I'm wondering, how do you actually somehow keep continuous improvement alive? And I'm using this sentence on purpose because when organizations switch, often the reasoning given behind is that this switch will make us better. And it doesn't matter what they choose, whether they go from less to safe, the argument still is we now believe that this will make us better and allow us to have advantage in the future. But then they end up doing things like this, putting people in the wrong roles or not giving them enough time. You're an engineer and a QA person and also the Scrum Master, and you're a PO. But just stick with the backlog, but then we will still tell you what to put there or not put there. And in a way, the spirit of continuous improvement dies, even if that was the stated goal in the beginning. So how do you keep that alive? How do you bring that into the picture and keep fostering it?
Well, I think that when this transformation is happening, there should be someone who will explain and teach people within the organization how these built-in continuous improvement mechanisms within any given framework, for example, Scrum, actually work, and that this is the essence. Giving you an example. Last year, I worked with a startup company, and they asked me, okay, Anton, so we have this new brilliant idea. We're gathering a team, and we want to implement a pure, proper Scrum. And I said, okay, yeah, let's go for that. And then 2 weeks later, like basically the first sprint is over, we're gathering all together at the retrospective. And the retrospective is, this a typical boring retrospective that most probably everyone has seen. People complain about peanuts. Like, coffee is bad, machines are not so shiny and perfect, and no one is actually talking about elephants in the room. You know what? This retro is over, and then I'm having a call for 3 hours with people who brought me there, saying, Anton, we have to escalate this. Anton, we have to fix this. None of the elephants in the room were mentioned and touched. We have to change, we have to improve all of these things. And then I use these as an opportunity to explain them, that this is the way how you ruin the built-in self-improving, continuous self-improving mechanism of Scrum. You're basically stealing this opportunity from the team members, teaching them that there are parents here mommy and daddy, managers, they will solve this. So I told them, this is a habit that your engineers brought from the previous companies. You have to break this habit. But you have to break this habit by acting, or here in this moment, non-acting. And then I basically suggested them to let it go for the next sprint. Next sprint was the most painful experience of the majority of these engineers. They were complaining a lot, they were trying to escalate, and then when all of them came together to the retrospective, I told them, guys, I know for sure you suffered a lot. This is your opportunity to take care of your work life and change something. And at that point, all the major elephants in the room were named, and ideas how to improve them were created. But in majority of the companies, it's always someone taking care about these things. And then, teams start to talk about peanuts, and then sooner or later they start to question what's the reason of us having these retrospectives. Let's do them not once in the sprint, but once in a month or once in a quarter, because peanuts deserve less frequent stocking.
No, that's amazing. But that's and not but, and that's a way to look at what is not working and start to highlight it at the right occasion, right? So not hiding it under the carpet. What about celebrating the achievements and noting down also all the minor changes and improvements that they have been making? How much role does that play in this transformation and continuous improvement?
Well, I think that's a very important topic, but these celebrations should happen after an idea of making a breakthrough was created. So, meaning, first there should be this painful retrospective when all the elephants in the room were mentioned, and then team made a beautiful effort to improve a few of them. And then a sprint later, there will be a wonderful celebration, because this is this true moment where team starts to feel empowered. We suffered, we identified the suffering points, we created a plan, we fucking fixed it. We are awesome. And this is the moment when team actually understands what does it mean to be empowered. And then this team becomes a big pain in the ass for an organization, because if organization is not ready to host such a team, they will become bastards for everyone, because they got the power to change their destiny, and now they will go really crazy if someone starts to steal it. Coming, for example, and saying, guess what, I want to change half of your backlog. And they will say, no, that's not how it works. And the other things.
Now, in a way, what you're telling me is that this team starts to take on responsibility and stand up for themselves. And of course, continues to get better at doing this with every step and retrospectives. So are you suggesting that everybody in an organization, in a way, becomes the leader of their own destiny?
Well, this is like there is this nice buzzword called situational leadership. So this is how situational leadership looks like. This is the way how you simplify and descale organization. You basically have these centers of informal leadership in places. And this is how you become a more agile organization.
Would you also say this is similar to becoming an entrepreneur, where you start to kind of optimize the ROI on your time, effort, and just being in that deal?
Of course. This is basically kind of an awakening for a regular employees, that my performance is not about 40 hours in the office, or about line of codes. A friend of mine, he's an engineer. He likes to introduce me to his other friends by saying, "This is Anton, he is an Agile master, and he ruined my life as an engineer." Because before meeting him, I was very proud of the lines of code I'm producing every week. Now I'm only happy when I see an impact. So this is this awakening that you have to have in the different parts of organization, and then with this, you will have this internal entrepreneur mindset. Because people will start to question, is it 40 hours per week a good performance, or dozens of lines of code, or a beautiful API, or whatsoever? Because at the end, business is about impact.
So I want to go into a bit of an exercise of imagination, and feel free to go all radical on this or stepwise, because for me, the moment you said this is kind of the in-practice version of some of the concepts that we talk about, right? So now I'm thinking, well, this team wakes up, the individuals wake up, they start to take responsibility. That is the beginning of a self-organizing team, right? Because one way or another, they will start changing things around, even if it is in their little bubble first, and they will start to kind of be the odd ones out in the organization. If this starts to happen, where does this journey end? And perhaps we can imagine together, how does it look as it starts to change?
Well, if we're talking about this bubble within a big organization, and I've seen these many times, typically these bubbles sooner or later starts to shine on the landscape of a big organization, because they're building some really cool product that everyone is talking about, and they work a crazy way that everyone is angry about, because these bastards, every time we see them, they look happy, they're laughing a lot, it looks like they're having fun and chilling a lot, while the product is awesome. And then people, become envy and maybe try to move to this department, if it's a department, or asking them how it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that now we're starting to see on the bigger scale on the market, because there are more and more organizations which were built with this true belief system. And then you see how people disappearing from traditional organizations into these shiny bubbles, because it just feels better working there.
So you also introduced me to this book, Reinventing Organizations, which has many examples of this. And one of my favorites is the factory Favi in France, I believe, and Birdsong, the organization in Netherlands. Do you want to tell us a bit about those or the other examples that stand out for you?
Well, you know what? So I think everyone who is watching this podcast could read this book. And maybe I would like to bring some more personal examples that I had an experience getting in touch with. And one example is pretty recent. A friend of mine, a wonderful product owner, was looking for a new company. Just because, as I already shared, he got tired of this traditional approach. And the company he was having an interview, they asked for a contact that knows him well from a professional and from a personal side. And originally it sounded like, this referral interview. Mm-hmm. And he asked me, Anton, could you have a call with them? I said, yeah, for sure. And then I'm having a call with them, and the first what they telling me is, Anton, by the way, sorry for a little bit of mess, but this is not a referral interview. We actually already made a decision of hiring this guy. He is amazing. Why we're having an interview with you? because we're afraid to fail on board him.
Oh, wow.
So we're more than sure that he is a perfect fit for us. He is amazing. We're afraid we fail to onboard him. So we want now to dedicate an hour of talking with you as a person who knows him personally and professionally, how we can not fail and how we can make his onboarding the most comfortable journey. And we were talking, about these things, how they can help him.
Wow.
So this is for me this new type of a company, which from the day one believes into mantra, he will not fail. We can fail as an organization. Let's us learn how not to do this.
Wow. Where do you think this this incredible mindset comes from? Because you're now telling a story of really a radical transformation. This is not just a regular, let's make sure that Max does a great job here, but really going further than that. How does that come from? Did you ask them?
Of course. right at the end, I told them, okay, now I'm curious. Tell me how you got these in place. And guess what? It's again this story of a personal transformation of a leader of the company. So an HR lady told me, guess what? That was the reason why I decided to work at this company. And I decided to work at this company because I saw our founder giving a podcast talk.
Oh, wow.
Telling how traditional organizations fail with creating this wonderful atmosphere for employees. And that was the reason he escaped from a bloody enterprise, creating his own company, where the true belief of creating a wonderful environment for employees and believing into them, but worrying that company could fail in boarding them, would be a key point, key aspect.
Wow, that's impressive and amazing. Now I feel like asking, what are some bad advice and recommendations people get as agile coaches that kind of sets them up for not really doing something great for themselves or others? Do you see any bad or wrong ideas going around the industry?
I think that the very repetitive bad approach how to run an agile transformation is just to forget about human beings in your company and just take one of these blueprints. And very often it's a blueprint creating as a cocktail of different blueprints and different case studies of organizations, mix them together, and then you have a PowerPoint presentation of 200, 300, 400 slides, which in details explaining you how a new life in the company will look like, and just apply this blindly. Because for me, that's again this prehistoric fabric approach of we're just changing the shape of our machinery, where human beings are still gears.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope not too many people listen to that or try that anymore. So I'm interested now, Anton, you have been coaching companies, you have become an entrepreneur yourself. You had to transform a lot thanks to COVID, like most of us as well. What's next for you? What is it that drives you, and where do you want to take your impact?
I think that for me now one of the major driving points is actually to meet these leaders all over the world who already build this inner niche for a change, but they don't have support yet. Maybe that's the reason that I decided to run as a public workshops, these management 3.0 workshops, because I believe this is a strong answer to the question how I can start my personal transformation as a leader. Because yeah, the success stories in my experience start with that moment. I, as a leader, realized that I need to change and I need help. So this is for me these fascinating stories that drives me crazy and helps me to, travel all over the world, handle these jet lags, and yeah, having this not so well balanced life of an independent person.
So, can you tell us about something that inspired you very much recently?
Yeah, there was this founder of the company uh, that reached me with the next intro. He told me, Anton, you know what? I think it's time for my organization to be transformed, and I want it to be transferred not only in a tech side. This is the reason actually I struggle so much finding a consultant who could support me, because the majority of them talking about Agile, this is for IT. No, I need the whole business transformation. But he said I took a view at the Agile transformation, read a Scrum guide, and actually realized that a lot of things that mentioned there is very opposite to what I believe and how I get used to work. So I want to start working with you personally one-on-one until the point we both will believe it's time to work with the organization as well. And for me it was, fascinating. So the leader realized that he is actually the major bottleneck on the path of his organization to transform.
That is impressive. And it takes a lot of courage to come out and admit that, right?
Yeah, of course.
So more power to that leader, and I hope you guys have already started working and started making a lot of changes. So we are coming to 1 hour mark. As always, I have the feeling we could go on for another 6 hours, but we'll have to break it up in at least 6 different parts of the podcast. Let's bring it to the end with one last question. If there was one message, one advice, one thing that you could share with potentially millions of people, what would that be?
Trying to gather everything together that we talked today. I think it would be don't forget on a daily basis to see that you are surrounded by wonderful human beings, not deers.
Amen to that. Anton, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful hour speaking with you as always, and I really appreciate the way you think, the way you share, the stories you bring to the table, and I look forward to more.
Thank you for inviting. It was a pleasure for me.